So first of all, thank you guys for joining this month's community hours. So for those that have not attended a community hours before, this is about Cayosoft Guardian Protector. It is our real-time threat detection and change monitoring solution. It's an always-on platform. It's basic and it's free. Anybody can go download it and install it in your environment. And the goal with the community hours is to talk through Cayosoft Guardian Protector, why we developed it, but more importantly, show you how you can use it in your environment, some tips and tricks, how to get it up and running, etc. So I'm gonna talk to a couple slides, but I'm not gonna hit you with a lot of slides. That's not how I like to do things. I like to jump into, the meat of the demonstration. So really, if we look at it from this aspect, why did we build Cayosoft Guardian Protector? Well, first of all, there's a couple of reasons. There was a shrinking AD expertise, Active Directory, 26 years old. A lot of folks that have been managing Active Directory, they're either it moved on to be their different technology, maybe getting ready to retire. So we need to be able to, and it's still a very highly prevalent technology in organizations. So we need to help organizations teach the next generation as well. The second reason is probably the more important reason. Traditional solutions really focused on Active Directory security, but with the expanding attack surface, Active Directory isn't the only thing that we need to defend. So we need to look at things like Entra ID for sure, but it's not even just Entra ID anymore. We have to look at M365, Exchange Online, Microsoft Teams, as well as Microsoft Intune. We've seen recent attacks using native capability Microsoft Intune as well as recently as a couple weeks ago. So these are all things that we need to understand. And then if we looked at the tooling landscape, there are a lot of great solutions out there. So I want to kind of set the stage there. So there's a lot of solutions that helped us understand through scanning or through assessment exactly which misconfigurations and vulnerabilities that we had in our environment. But the problem is they were scans and not something real time. And attackers, they're not waiting for your next scan. And if we look at the attack surface of Active Directory, Entra ID, M365, and Intune, these platforms are not static, meaning they're not stale solutions. We're constantly adding new users, new permissions, adding people to roles, taking people out of roles, and we may miss things if we don't have real-time visibility. And if we looked at the next level, so then the next thing I would have to do if I wanted real-time visibility, now I needed to have funding and go out and buy a production quality solution. So that was a gap for a lot of organizations because they didn't have the funding to go out and purchase a real-time, always-on change monitoring, threat detection with alerting solution, because it just wasn't in the cards for their organization. So we looked at these things and we're like, okay, well, we have Cayosoft Guardian, which is our core platform. Why don't we build a free version of Cayosoft Guardian called Guardian Protector and offer these capabilities to everybody? And what I want you to say is some organizations look at free stuff as not good enough. But I want you to make sure that you understand that this is a live product. We're constantly updating this product the same way that we update it for our customers. For example, I'll talk about some recent things that we've added in our environment. We're constantly adding new threat signatures to our platform on a monthly basis. So this isn't something that's stale. It's not something that's less than. It is a real-time solution that can help organizations like yourselves get an understanding of where they currently have challenges, right? So opportunities to improve and harden their environment, but more importantly, alert you when things are changing in your environment so that you're stopping administrative drift from the inside, but also alerting you of things that could be coming from the outside. So that is why we built Cayosoft Guardian Protector. So what am I talking about? So let's actually jump in to Guardian Protector. So first of all, the home page, I'm going to zoom out here a little bit so you can see this a little bit more. So what is Guardian Protector? Well, Guardian Protector is a real-time threat detection, change monitoring with alerting to Microsoft Teams and email. So Exchange Online or SMTP. Now, what I will say is, let's talk a little bit about the architecture. It's a Windows-based server. Yes, you have to run this on a Windows server in your environment. It has a SQL backend. You can use the SQL Express. It holds up to 50 gig now. We're using the most modern version of SQL Express. Or you can deploy it and use your own SQL instance if you choose so. To get connected, you will need to have some privileges to create and add the domains and tenants if you choose to. So let's talk about connectivity to get to Active Directory. What I would suggest is that you start out with using an account that is in the schema admins role or group. The account that we use will not have those permissions, but it's important to have the ability to write to the schema partition so we can actually look at what's in there. And when I say write, we have read access to these partitions. So that allows us to add all the partitions. And then with that account, it's going to create a group managed service account that has read-only access to your Active Directory environment by default. You can change that and give it elevated rights, but for Protector, it's not needed. You only need to run with read-only access. To connect to Entra tenants or Microsoft 365 tenants, what you'll need to do then is have a global admin account to start. Log in with that global admin. You're going to then allow it to create an Entra ID application. Again, read-only access inside your Entra ID environment. That application will be then certificate managed. So every 30 days, it will be certificate-based authentication. We will rotate that certificate for you every 30 days automatically. You will grant consent. And for an Active Directory, the GMSA, we rotate that password every 7 days, where Microsoft rotates that every 30 days for GMSAs. So we're taking this very serious from a security perspective. Once you get those connected, the very first thing it's going to do is go out and ingest the current state of the state. What do I mean by that? It's going to read in your Active Directory objects, your users, your groups, your permissions, your computers, all of those things. Every object inside of Active Directory will get read in. And then the same thing for Entra ID. We're going to read in your tenant level settings, your group, your roles, your computers, your application settings, your Intune settings. All of those things get added if you choose to add them as part of the onboarding. Once it does that initial ingestion, the very next thing I would tell you to do is you're going to see a banner up here. I've already done ingestion, but you would see a banner up here. It will just basically say that, wait, we're ingesting your objects, and then it'll go away. The very next thing I will tell you to do is go to the threat detection dashboard, and you only need to do this once, is first of all, go check for the latest updates to see if there's anything that we may have put out in regards to a new threat signature. And I'll get into some of those things as well. As you can see, the last one we put out was last month. We're getting ready to release new signatures this month as well. You'll see some here at the end of the month. And then from there, the next thing after you've updated, I'm going to tell you to run this once. Now it's going to run after that on a regular basis behind the scenes, depending on what the threat is. So there's different timing that this will look for. Some of them are real time, some of them are scheduled. So once it does that, it's going to go out and detect all these new threats in your organization. And that's going to get you an understanding of where you currently have an opportunity to improve your security posture. So we'll call this the hardening phase. So this is the hardening phase, and it helps us understand where we might have misconfigurations or sins from the past through just regular administrative actions, or maybe even default settings out of Microsoft, right? Let's be honest. When Active Directory started 26 plus years ago, there was no really good secure default settings for Active Directory. Now it has improved over time, so I'm not going to say that it hasn't gotten better, but it, still opportunities for us to get better in regards to that. So the next thing I would say after it's done running that is I would go ahead and initiate my download summary report. So behind the scenes here, it'll actually run the report. I think I've ran it up here. Oh, it's already running, so you have to wait. Once this report runs, we can actually go ahead and download it in the environment. So here it is. And this can be exported as a CSV, HTML, or if you're good with JSON, you can use JSON as well. And the reason why I say export it so you can take a look at it is you'll see we classify some things a couple different ways. The first thing that we classify boy, if I can talk, is by severity. It goes from critical to informational. Critical being the most dangerous configuration, or think tier 0 lateral access in your environment. High meaning, hey, if someone was able to take advantage of this misconfigurations, most likely it would lead to tier 0 escalation and, domain compromise. Medium, maybe lesser impact, and then obviously low, more around, best practices and information, even further hardening your environment. So that's the first way that we'll look at it. The second way that we should look at it is from a remediation complexity. So if I want to get the biggest bang for my organization, what I should focus on first are the most critical, lowest complexity items inside of my environment. Why should I do it that way? Because I can focus on very extremely high risk misconfigurations in my environment, but would have low impact from a production perspective to my organization. Once I clean up those and harden those, I will then move to critical medium, and then maybe when I get into the critical high, there's things that's going to prevent me from being able to make those changes right away. I have to do additional change control, maybe talk to application owners, etc., because they bring higher risk to your organization. So what I would do next is we'll focus on high, low, high, medium, and work your way down. So you're focusing on using the severity ranking first, because it's going to be the biggest improvement in your environment, but also the lowest complexity, because it's going to create, I'll say, less friction in your environment from a production perspective. So I want to kind of hit on some of those things. And you can use this report, and it's, by the way, it's a live report. So it's not something that, you have to run over and over and over and over again. It's going to pick up new things along the way as it picks, and then you just can basically download and check the report again from that aspect. Or you can actually see it as alerts in your environment. So the next thing I would probably, once I set that up in my environment, the very next thing I would do is configure my communication channels. So now I've got Active Directory online, I have Entra ID online, I've basically updated my threat signatures, ran my first threat scan in my environment, and now it's doing the work for me. Now I want to take advantage of getting alerts into my organization. So the next thing I want to set up is, how do I want to get alerts? Do I want alerts through email? We can certainly do that. Or do I want alerts through Microsoft Teams? We can set those up as well. And not only are we can we get alerts through those different channels or mediums, what we can do then is also separate and be very specific with alerts. So let's just say maybe there's some higher critical signatures that you want to get to a different team. And we'll talk about some of those here in a minute. You can actually set up a separate channel and basically have those alerts go to a different team. If AD is managed by one team, you can send alerts there. If Entra ID is managed by another team, you can send alerts there, etc. So each threat can actually have its own alerting channel or go to a different alerting scheme. Now, most organizations will break it up basically based on how they're structured in the organization. But there are certain threats that I would want, maybe I have an on-call, that these are live threats, not more like misconfigurations. These are changes that are happening in my environment. What are some of those things? Someone getting added to a privileged role in Entra ID. I don't want to wait to find out that happened, the next day and didn't go to my on-call team if I have one, or my SOC. I want to get that to their hands immediately. Same thing if I was adding someone to domain admins, or we saw that, or someone changing the admin SD holder in Active Directory, or changing maybe our Intune policy, etc. So these are the different things that I might want to set up differently in my organization. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is some threat signatures that you may not be aware that we have these. So for example, speaking of Intune, we have a threat signature around unusual device wipe activity. And this was, if we look at what happened recently to a large medical device company, there you would notice that there was news about someone wiping a lot of devices in an organization, and this can be configured to generate an alert. Now, we're going to generate an alert no matter what, but we generate here on 3 devices in a 10-minute interval. Now, what I will say is, for most organizations, this is probably too low of a threshold, but you can see what your normal activity looks like and then put in, more than 20, etc. So you could basically configure these to work within your organization. You can shorten the time frame. Now, minimum is 2 to 999. And then for here, it's going to be from 10 to 59, right? Because you don't want to wait too long for this type of an alert. But that's not the only device style wipe that we have, or what we'll call bulk. If we look at some of the other bulk things that we have around real-time threats as well, is you can look for, hey, look, we're seeing a bunch of changes to a group of users. And in the settings, you can specify the number of collected items, the number of changes. Is it deletions? Is it undeletions? Is it creations? Maybe creations is fine, but you don't delete users. So that could be a signature, a sign of something that's going on. Same thing with groups. And as well as it applies to Active Directory as well. And the same thing with computers and Entra devices as well. Not Intune managed, but specifically Entra. So these are some settings in there that or well, things that you need to tweak inside your organization to make them work for you from an alerting perspective. But I want to let you know that these threats are there so that if you want to use these, just go in, configure them, make sure that you're tuning them appropriate for your organization. You don't want to create a lot of noise. That's not something that you want to add into your organization. You want to make sure that these are tuned and specific to your org and what you guys do. If you start seeing a lot of these threats and it's normal activity, you can further tune. So that's the other thing I want you to understand. As well as if there are things that come into your environment that you've accepted and you want to be able to go in and say, yeah, we know, for example, let me find something here. We know that, for example, something is here. You can actually go in and even exclude. We can dismiss, we can resolve the alert in here, and you can also put comments in there in regards to that. So you're basically excluding certain items from being added and, basically being picked up the next time. So you've already kind of validated things, hardened as much as you can, and now you know that this is just going to create some additional noise. You can exclude those as part of your threat. So the threat signatures, you can do a lot of modifications inside of those. If you weren't aware of those, that capability, please take a look at them. Each threat has some kind of configuration. For example, if you want to add additional checks for certain groups, etc., or privileged users in some of the threats, you can modify those as well. All of this information can be found on our threat signature page. So you can actually go to the page that I showed you earlier and see everything that's going on that we're doing from a threat perspective. So that's around threats. And we have some new threats that we put in. So recently we've added, I think we put in RC4, or maybe that's coming up. So basically, if you're not familiar, Microsoft is on a journey, and it's the right journey. They're deprecating RC4 encryption for Kerberos. Started in April. Started in January. The next phase was this month in April. Now you need to be able to, once the next phase in July, you need to be able to look at things and get alerted when someone sets RC4 encryption explicitly, because that's how you have to get around this new mandate by Microsoft. If you want to use RC4, you have to specifically set it. We will actually detect that. So we think of that as more of a downgrade level attack, but also this will let you know if you have any existing objects with the MSDS supported encryption type specifically set to RC4 in your organization. We also put in threats around service connection points, because that's another attack vector that often gets overlooked by organizations. It's not picked up by audit. Service connection points are used for like SCCM. If you're a hybrid environment and doing hybrid device join, you have service connection points in Active Directory. You want to make sure that people that have access to modify those service connection points are appropriate. So we do look for the permissions. And then we also look for when permissions are modified to SCP connection points as well in the organization. So that's around threats. So if you think about that, that helps us clean up and harden our environment. And that's what I'll call identity security posture management. And we definitely need solutions like that. But that is where most solutions stop. But that's not where Guardian Protector stops, because we actually have real-time change monitoring. So what am I talking about? So inside of Guardian Protector, remember, we're grabbing this information live from Active Directory, live from Entra ID, live from M365, including Intune. So once we're grabbing this information, we're doing observational change. We look at this from more of an observational change perspective, not specifically event log. Now, we will use event logs to actually backfill information around who the initiator was of the change, but we're not relying solely on event log information out of the bat. And the reason being is if an attacker gets inside of your environment and they can change your audit policies or clear your event logs, the technology that you would normally probably have in place would be a SIM or maybe some other auditing tool that relies on event logs. Well, those events wouldn't be there, and now I'd be blind. So we didn't want to have those same constraints when we build our solution. We're talking natively directly to Graph API and then using unified access logs from Entra to fill in the initiator. And we're using their DirSync or replication API directly in Active Directory. And then we use the event logs to fill in the initiator around the change. So what changes can we see? Well, we can see any change in the environment. So one thing, we're pulling in all changes, but I also can actually just filter through this way is select Active Directory changes only. So what do we see? We can see people get added to, groups, certainly, because I basically escalated the privileges and I gave my service account elevated rights as a demonstration. But we can see basically password resets. We see normal activity that occurs in Active Directory, but we may see things like group policy changes as well. Let's see if I have any group policy changes in my environment that I've picked up recently. So I did, right? So I have some group policy changes in my environment. I can see if I drill in on the group policy, I can see that, hey, for this environment, we removed domain admins, administrators, IGA admins and administrators, and IGA, and basically was IGA admins. Actually, this was me locking myself out last week of my environment by mistake by playing around with group policy and basically restricting RDP access. And Guardian Protector alerted on me that this occurred in my environment. Now, I did have the paid version of Guardian, and I was able to roll this back. So I was able to get my environment back up and running. But you can see we have all the information around it, right? So we can see the settings that were changed. And more importantly, also, if we look at the details in there, we can see who made the change as well. So and here it was the administrator, and we can see, again, the timing of it, all of these things that would help us from an incident response perspective. So let's see if I have some Entra changes that we can demonstrate as well. I know I should have a few. And these saved queries are quick filters that I can put in place. I'll show you some advanced filtering as well. So I do have a lot of Entra changes. So let's I'm bombarded here with Entra actually updating itself. So we can see here that this is actually Microsoft doing this agent ID administration, adding it to my tenant. It looks like they're also taking it back out. So these are some things. Yes, there is a full upgrade path to Guardian Protector. I saw that there was an answer. You can actually start in a trial of the full product by clicking on any of the stars here, and it will basically prompt you to then start the trial in your environment. So you can basically start a trial. Now, this will get you access to what we'll call our Guardian Audit and Restore paid solution. To start the solution here, which includes the instant forest recovery, it does require you to contact a salesperson. This requires a little more setup to get this up and running in an organization. But you can actually click on any of these inside the change history, and you can start a full 25-day trial and take Guardian Audit Restore for a spin. And then 25 days, if you decide you don't want the full product, it'll automatically downgrade you back to Protector. So again, it's entirely up to you if you want to go to the next level. Now, most organizations want the rollback capability. Absolutely. So they want the rollback capability in their organization, so they will go to the next level. But some organizations just need to have the alerting and change monitoring, or they just don't have funding right now to move to the next phase. So keep that in mind. So you're not locked into Guardian Protector. If you want to go to the paid, but I'm not here to really talk about the paid. I want to focus on the community and the value that you guys get out of the box with Guardian Protector. So let's look at some other changes that we can do in some filtering real quick. So I'm going to go into Active Directory. I'm going to get away from Entra for a minute. I said that and then I typed it in. So I want to go back to all Active Directory changes. We can do additional filtering as well. So with Protector, you can actually filter, and this goes with all Guardian products. You can filter on time. So what happened within the last hour? We can run that query. Nothing, because I haven't changed anything in the last hour. Let's go look for the last 7 days. So now I'm filtering down on the last 7 days. So I can see those things. I can go back to all time, run query. But I can also filter in on properties as well. So there's a bunch of different ways we can filter. Maybe there's DNS, containers, group policy, group scope. Maybe we just want to focus on groups. Now we have a filter just for Active Directory groups as well, but you can focus just on groups. So we can see that there are some updated ACL permissions to these groups. So not just necessarily a group change, like membership change, but somebody changed the permissions to the ACLs on these groups, and we can then drill into what it was in the environment. So basically, unknown admin was granted full control, right? That would be something I want to be able to get an alert on. And as well as if there is something that occurs, it will fire an alert for any of those real-time threat detections as well. Because remember, we do indicators of exposure. That tells us, hey, these are opportunities to harden our environment. So next question I saw from somebody, how do we handle multiple forests? So you can actually go in and add in multiple forests, multiple domains, multiple tenants as well. And you would just onboard them through the user interface. So you just add new domain here, same thing with add new tenant. Now, what I will say is for the forest capability, if you want it all in one console, you cannot use group managed service account right now for that unless you have a trust in between those environments. If there's no trust in the environment, normally we would use our AD connector, but AD connector is not available for Protector. And that would require you then to use I'll say a legacy style service account to connect to additional forests if there's no trust in place. So I want to be transparent about that. Multiple domains, multiple forests is supported. Obviously, multiple domains in the same forest, no problem, because you're going to deploy it in your domain and then use a group managed service account. But if you want to use group managed service account and there's no trust between those domains, then you would have to use the legacy style service account for any domains outside of where Guardian Protector is installed. And there is basically just add a new domain, but you would have to use legacy style service account. That may change in the future. It's still up for discussion and being able to take advantage of our AD connector with Guardian Protector. But for right now, it's not available. So we do support it, but there's a special configuration that you need to do to kind of get that up and running. So we'll call that out. So multi-domain, multi-forest, and multi-tenant. Now, multi-tenant, super simple. There's no special sauce there. All you need to do is deploy another. When you go in, you add a tenant. You're going to need a global admin account, create that Entra ID application the same way you did for your other tenant. It's a little bit different with group managed service account because of the way that Microsoft does group managed service account. So it's not a Guardian design issue, so to speak. It's more around how Microsoft allows GMSAs to work across domains or cross forests. Any other questions there? Did I answer your question? Trying to also pay close attention to the Q&A. So I appreciate those questions. Let me see if there's any out there. Is there a call-in number for this team? There should be in your invite. There will be a recording sent out later. So if I saw someone say, hey, they can't attend the entire meeting, we'll send out a recording a day after this session. We do it for every one that we put out. So we talked about change monitoring and change history and being able to see visibility in there. We talked about some filtering. Now, we also added a new capability in because agents are being something that a lot of organizations are beginning to use. So we did put in some things around Entra agents. Now, I'm going to say is right now, I do not have any agent activity in this domain or this tenant. So I'm going to flip over to an environment that actually does, and I'll show you what this looks like. Now, this is using my Guardian but it's the same as Guardian Protector. So if we do that and we look at this environment, you'll see that we're picking up Entra agent changes as well, right? So things like new Entra agent identity blueprint principles, new Entra updates. So anything that you would typically see through Entra, through basically conditional access policies or agent changes, all those things will get logged in the same way that, or I'm sorry, Entra ID applications, they'll all get logged the same way that they do for agents as well. So we'll be able to detect those, and you'll be able to see exactly what was changed. And then basically you can use that for incident response, or if there's some other thing that you would need to use it for. But more in this case with Guardian Protector, it's going to be more from a visibility perspective. With the paid version, you would be able to roll it back as well. So I'm showing Guardian. As you can see, it's the same as Guardian Protector. It just doesn't have the rollback functionality. And the reason why I showed this is just because in my Guardian Protector environment, that tenant doesn't have any changes. I also probably have some more changes I'll show you, but it'll be the same thing that you would see in Guardian Protector. I just have more tenants in this environment. So I'll show you some other Entra changes as well. So we can filter in on Entra changes. We can look at all Entra ID changes. And again, looks like we're getting crushed by Microsoft right now on these Entra roles. So it looks like Microsoft's putting a lot of Entra role permissions. Looks like they're taking them in and out. That's kind of polluting it. So maybe let's look at something else in this environment. So here we can see that we have some group users changed in Entra, and we can see again, this is probably coming from our directory synchronization in the organization. So again, there's a lot of activity that we track in regards to those changes, both across all Guardian platforms. Like I said, Protector, again, going back to Protector here, you'll see that we don't have any agent changes. But again, if we look at other changes, so if we go back to, I don't want to do all changes, I'm going to do Active Directory. I can show you some live changes as well here. So we can see, again, different filtering for group changes, access permissions. So if we want to just filter on what permissions changed inside of the environment, we can clearly see that as well. Let's do a live change just so you can kind of see that as well. So let's do a live change to a group in my environment. I'm just going to go and wipe out. Now, I'm going to have to stop Guardian. Actually, no, I can run both, I believe. I'm just going to remove some of these users so you can kind of see the live change in Guardian. I'm going to go back to all Active Directory changes just to filter this down a little bit more. And now we can see that full group being removed. Now, what I will say is this can help you for incident response as well. So I can see that, yes, Lisa Johnson was removed from this group. But if I want to see who else was removed from the group or what other activity occurred with this group, I can actually drill in to this group and see the full change to this group as well. So let's go in, look at change history for the group. Now I'm running this on a VM on my desktop, so it's going to be a little slow. It's a lot slower than what you would see if you had a production server running this. So we'll give it a minute to load, and now we can see exactly what happened, and I can drill into this change as well. So the reason why I want to show this is because this will also let you see that it wasn't only that one user that was removed from the group. You can see that all users were removed from this group. With Guardian Protector, you could take this information, export it out, and then you could use it to re-import using PowerShell to put these users back. If you had the paid version, you could click the rollback button and you'd be back up and running. So you can see that from exactly all these people removed from this environment. Again, if we go into the general, we can see what time it occurred, who did it, etc. So it does help with incident response, and as well as you can, it helps you quickly get back up and running. Even if you don't have the rollback, I could export this out, feed it into PowerShell, and then put my group membership back if needed. Or you can actually click, the trial and test the rollback feature as well. So there's some options there as well. So we talked a lot about the capability, and the reason why, again, so this isn't a point in time. right? It is a real-time solution. It does the threat detection, right? So it helps you do the identity security posture management, understand where you have opportunity to clean up and harden. That's the first phase of how you would use it. Once you clean up and harden, then you need to be able to have visibility into things that are changed in your environment, and then also get alerts. And then it can help improve your incident response if something does occur in your environment as well. So if we look at like attack activity, and I'm going to go back to my other environment real quick, but it would be the same for Guardian Protector. So I'm going to go back to this environment real quick because I did some other changes and I have more history here. So let me go back and go Entra changes, and I want to look for a particular user. So if we go back to the Intune attack that occurred a few weeks ago, how that attack unfolded is basically they compromised the global admin account, and then they created a new user. They created a new user in the environment. So why is this important? Because now with Guardian Protector, you can see that that user was created by Craig Birch. But if Craig Birch wasn't working during that hour, there might be something suspicious. So by itself, this alone is not saying that, a new user is bad. But the next thing it did was this. They added it to the global administrator role. At that point, we're firing an alert if you have alerting configured, which I suggested anybody that's using Guardian Protector fire the alert. So it would fire the alert in that environment so that you can get that. So this type of activity, as I mentioned earlier, I would set to, if I have an on-call or my SOC team, this is activity I want to get to them immediately. I need to make sure that if an account gets added to global admin, I'm not waiting, for a next scan or even, the next day. I need to get an alert out to the appropriate team so that they can investigate this. The next thing that they did, which I don't have the threat fired in my environment, but the next thing they did was move on to device wipe. And I already showed you that we have that capability as well. So you can set up if this would have fired in that instance. But if we look at not just this attack, all modern day identity attacks, they start with some kind of credential breach and then they pivot, right? So they move laterally and then they move to privilege escalation and then they move to the next step and so forth. If you're only using solutions that are doing identity security posture management that are point in time, you will be blind to that lateral movement and privilege escalation in your organization if you do not have any kind of capabilities. Yes, you could send this stuff to a SIM, absolutely. But I mentioned earlier, there are ways to make that SIM ineffective. You might have EDR solutions that help around this as well. And they are great. All these solutions work well together, I would say, defense in depth. But we've seen with modern attacks, actually uninstalling or downgrading EDRs through EDR silencer or EDR killer, which I've spoke about numerous times to different organizations. So again, this solution, it's free for everyone. All you need is a Windows Server 2016 or higher, the ability to create a group managed service account, and the ability to create that Entra ID application if you need to monitor a hybrid environment. If you're don't have a hybrid environment, there's no need for that. Same thing if you're only Entra and have no on-prem. You can just use it for Entra, M365, and Intune visibility as well. So again, it's free for you to download. It's free for you to run forever. If you want to upgrade to the trial, as I mentioned, you can certainly do that and try it, take it, for a test drive. So I want to go back to the slides real quick, just to kind of talk to you about some next steps. So the first thing I would encourage you to do, if you haven't already downloaded Guardian Protector, download it. There's no reason why an organization shouldn't give this a try, because I guarantee you it's going to find misconfigurations and help that you may have not picked up in your organization. But beyond just the misconfiguration part, it's going to alert you on things that you're probably not getting alerted on today. Bulk user changes, bulk device changes, Intune device wipes. You can create configure honey accounts, password spraying, DC shadow attacks. All those things are part of Guardian Protector. Password hygiene, all those things. Again, as part of Guardian Protector. Even if you have an EDR, or even if you have another solution, run it side by side and see if there's additional coverage. I guarantee you it'll pick up something that you're not getting today that will make your organization more secure in the future. So go ahead and you can scan the QR code or just go to cayosoft.com, go to our solutions page and download Guardian Protector. I can put that in the chat. So let me just grab that real quick for you. I'm just going to go back to our home page here and then the solutions. If you go to Protector, this tells you exactly everything about the product. You click on this link. This takes you to the download page. I'll actually put that here in the comment as well. Hopefully everybody can see that in there, as well as if I go back to we have a dedicated Reddit community for support. So again, it's a free solution. It's free for all. So we set up a dedicated Reddit channel for support, tips and tricks. So please join the Reddit community once you've downloaded it. If you have questions, I'm the moderator. So there's no secret there. I'm the moderator. I'll be the one that works with you. So just post it in there. I'll try to get back as fast as possible. I have some auto mod stuff set up as well as we built another resource to help organizations get up and running. And that's our threat directory. So our threat directory, basically you can go out and, click on that. If you go to the main Protector page that I showed you a few minutes ago, all of these resources are listed there as well, not just the download page. So if I go back to the Protector page, I'll put that in there so you can bookmark that. And now you'll see you can get access to the threat directory, also the Reddit community, etc. So I would bookmark that page if you're going to, and like I said, download it first and give it for a test drive. Remember, we're constantly adding new signatures. We're constantly adding new functionality. For example, I showed you earlier being able to look at agent activity. That goes to our paid customers, but that also goes to everybody that has Protector as well. So those features get added. So it's not something that we're not developing on. We're constantly developing because it's based off of our core. Obviously, there are certain paid features that go to our paid customers, but majority of the code is the same. And again, I would highly recommend organizations to download it. It would have prevented some of these attacks that we've seen recently in the headlines, especially around the Intune, but more importantly, even every night, if I research all the time, right? So every night we look at how, organizations are getting not just ransomware, but, just some cyber incident. It starts with identity. It pivots. It could start with identity. Usually, even if it doesn't start, it, will migrate to identity, Active Directory, Entra ID. So they'll pivot there next. Protector would have helped a lot of organizations. So if you're a nonprofit, a K-12, no matter what size of organization you are, is what I'm going to say is, this is for you. This is easy to use. Your AD admins, your security teams can use this to help improve your overall security posture, help become better defenders of this, your Active Directory, your Entra ID, your M365, and Intune. I'm going to open it up for questions, but there will be a recording of what I covered. I will also say in the next, I'll say in May, if you join the next Protector hour, I will be releasing basically a new series or hardening Microsoft identity using Guardian Protector. We have a podcast called Guardians of the Directory. I'm the host of that, and I will be putting out videos very specifically around hardening techniques each week that you can actually deploy quickly in your environment based off of what I showed you earlier, which is the threat summary. So if we go back to the threat summary report, we'll be basing it off of the threat summary report, and we'll be putting them out by the most critical, lowest complexity, as I mentioned, how you should work this in your environment to harden. So we'll start that in May. Look for Reddit. Again, join the Reddit. I'll post it out there. You can follow Guardians of the Directory, podcast as well. But you can also follow me on LinkedIn. I put other stuff out there to help the community around different things as well. And we're always putting tips and tricks out there as well. So I do appreciate you guys joining today's call. I'm going to open it up one last time for questions, put them in the Q&A. I tried to stay on top of it. It's just me here. So if there's something I missed, please call it out or repost it here as well. If the server has enough resources, any conflict, and no, you do not want to run Protector and any Guardian product and administrator on the same server. So that was to Angelus. So Angelus, the answer is no. Put them on a separate server. Is there a call-in number? I think I answered that. I can't. Okay, I answered that. Show 3 more comments. Okay, hang on. Here was the download. I see some chat. Hang on. There looks like some people. Can you post the URL here? Yep, 1 second. 1 minute. Here's the full Protector page again. I'm going to put it in the chat. That includes the download. That includes the threat directory. That also includes the Reddit, so you can subscribe. So if you missed that, again, we'll have the recording out tomorrow. Look for it. It'll be posted on the Reddit. I'll also post it on LinkedIn. So if there's not any other questions, okay, answered that one. I'll see if there's anything else. Hang on one last time, and then I'll cut you guys loose. Okay, that should be it. So I think I answered everyone's questions. If I didn't, post it on the Reddit. So again, join the Reddit community, post it on the Reddit, and we look forward to next month. I'll post, if you want to join the next one, we'll have new capabilities that we'll be talking about as well, new threat signatures that are already planned for, right? So I work with our threat team on a regular basis to help develop these as well. So we have some new stuff planned, as well as some new features, functionality that will be coming each month. There's always something new. So join our monthly community hours. That'll be posted again on our Reddit under events. So you can just go to our Reddit. You can see when the next one is. If you've downloaded it and you're working with it and there's something that you like, give us a shout. Tell us what you like. If there's something that you're like, hey, I thought it would do this, and it's something that I think it can be done. I'll go back and talk to the product team. I am on the product team. So I'll go back to the product team and see if there's something that we can do there. Not making any promises, but we do want community feedback in regards to improving the product. So definitely put that into the Reddit as well. And, tell us how it's helping your organization. We're also looking for, good feedback as well. It's like, hey, I found this has helped my organization. This is what I'm doing. Well, share that information as well. So again, I appreciate you joining this monthly community hour. Look for the recording in about a day, I would say. I'll post that out there. And until next time, make sure that you're protecting your environment. Stay safe. Thank you.